Hi everyone, we are six. Today we are presenting on innovation, enterprise, and society subject, focusing on topic 9 and 10. We will talk about the two main points. First one, we have how innovation and business can give everyone an equal chance to succeed. And second, as you can see from the pictures, why why a basic minimum income is necessary now that robots and AI are taking over. So let's get started.
So, Silicon Valley has long promoted the idea of permissionless innovations, the belief that anyone anywhere can build the next breakthrough regardless of background. This traces back to the earliest venture-funded startup of the 90s and 2000s, where the claim was that merit would be the key to success, and skill and effort was supposed to be the only things that mattered. In practice, like Combinator, open source culture, and just ship code hiring were meant to reinforce that idea. AI is the industry that has carried this promise the furthest, marketing itself explicitly the great equalizer of the 21st century. So the question is, does the industry that tells the story actually live up to it? To check, let's look at what actually happening. So according to Forbes 2026 data, the AI industry now counts 86 billionaires with a combined net worth of $2.9 trillion, in which founders and early engineers from OpenAI, NVIDIA, and Google DeepMind make up much of this group. 45 of these billionaires were created in just the past year alone, faster than any previous technology wave, including the dot-com boom or the mobile internet era. At the same time, millions of people working inside this same industry research engineers, entry-level hires, and the data labelers who train these models have not moved closer to that group at all. So it is clear that prosperity from AI is real and it is really large. But the question is why and by what mechanism it flows almost exclusively to so few. To answer that question, we first need to be precise about what the motion is actually asking us to test. The motion use a specific phrase. We call opportunities to achieve prosperity. We think this requires two separate conditions, not one. The first is the opportunity to compete, being able to compete for a position that can generate prosperity, not just being allowed to submit an application. This is a question about the starting gate, who get to enter the race for the highest value roles in the first place and what terms. The second is the opportunity to accumulate, being able to build wealth over time once employed, rather than being frozen at a fixed income level regardless of effort. This is a question about trajectory, whether working inside the industry actually compounds into rising income, equity, or bargaining power. So with these two conditions defined, we now show that the AI industry fails both of them through the three mechanisms shown on our slide: scarce talent, data moats, and algorithmic controls over workers.
So first frontier AI innovation is controlled by a very small group of experts. OpenAI's early talent was remained from Elif network, such as Google Brain, DeepMind, Toronto, or Montreal. Therefore, although the AI industry appear open to everyone, but the actual pathway to top research position remain extremely narrow. According to real principle of fair equality opportunities, people with small similar talent ambitions should have similar prospects regardless of their social background. However, access to the top AI position often depend on economic privilege, elite education, PhD programs, or professional network. This means like an inequality begins even before the recruitment process. A possible counter-argument is that elite credential also exists in law and medicine. However, the AI industry is different because it presents itself as open and permissionless. In reality, access to frontier AI is still concentrated among a small elite. Therefore, like AI might be reproducing the same power that is claimed to remove. So let's jump to the final point. Working in AI does not necessarily create equal prosperity. Like those who want choice the frontier company early may receive equities and benefit from the rapid increase in the company value, but the most of the workers only receive their salaries or do not gain the same ownership benefit. So therefore, AI may create more jobs, but it does not provide equal access to the honor, influence, or long-term wealth.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to believe that innovation open door for everyone. Today, I want to test believe that using NVIDIA to be clear. I'm not questioning whether NVIDIA has innovated. It's clearly has. My question is different. When one company control the essential infrastructure of AI, who actually get the benefit? Let's start with the simple distinction. Enterprise and innovation actually create wealth. They grow the economic pie, but creating wealth and sharing it are two different things. Furthermore, innovation can lead to infrastructure control, and infrastructure control steps who get access to property. When a single firm controls essential infrastructure, it can capture a disproportionate share of the benefit. So total property, right? However, equal opportunity to can shrink NVIDIA position in the AI market. So how did happen? Now, let me be fair to NVIDIA. Its hardware is actually advanced and it's right the modern AI computing, but NVIDIA doesn't just sell chip, it controls an integrated hardware and software ecosystem. And that control may allow it to earn what economic con, technical or monopoly rent, because rival can't not readily reproduce the complete system. The green part below con is the inclusion for openness. Legally, the market is open. Anyone may design new hardware. Practically, ecosystem depend market effective. Competition is extremely difficult. So the distinction become really when we separate two types of economic return. A normal innovation reward compensate research, risk taking, and successful valuation. It's earned by selling a superior product in an open, contestable market. Most people see that a fair, technical or monopoly brand is different. Profit that persists because access to essential technique, ecosystem or infrastructure is registered. Apply into this NVIDIA, the company clearly deserves competitive reward its early GPU or software breakthrough did concern Birin when the ecosystem lock-in allow value capture beyond that normal reward. So the concern isn't profit itself, it advantage and whether opportunity is actually equal. However, legal access is not the same practical opportunity. Procedural equality at whether firms are legally permitted to compete, and yet any enterprise may lawfully try to design and sell an AI accelerator. Substantive equality at something deeper. Do rivals have a realistic structural chance to compete effectively? The scale on this slide capture the imbalance. Is mean allowed to enter, however unable to compete. So the real question isn't whether NVIDIA position is legal, it's whether the resulting structure share opportunity fairly, and that brings us to the mechanism itself. The main mechanism behind this advantage is CUDA. Over nearly 2 decades, developers have accumulated code, library, specialized skill, and knowledge inside this one platform. See the flywheel on the right. More developers attract more user, and more user encourage further development. The network effect create deep customer dependency, leaving mean rewriting software, retraining engineer, resetting application, and accepting operational risk. It means the high switching cost this is a competitive deficit. A rival cannot simply offer hardware that's equally good or even slightly better. CUDA matter, post software dependency is only one part of NVIDIA advantage. Look at the one in the middle of the slide. A new competitor needs multi-billion-dollar capital. It also needs access to leading-edge chip fabrication. It needs advanced packaging capacity with also constraint, and it must build a supplier and hyperscaler relationship NVIDIA enjoy. So to conclude, the final diagram brings everything together. Ecosystem investment builds switching cost and period. Constantability weaken, rising power role, and possibly technical rent and concentrated property. That estimate include R&D, design, software support, and corporate cost, so isn't poor profit. It's a matter alongside with the dominant switching cost and period. Downstream startup, university, and researcher join AI innovation only on the nominal owners term. NVIDIA brew innovation can create enormous property without offering equal opportunity to access or share in it.
Our third argument is that AI is no longer replacing only workers, it is increasingly replacing managers. As AI systems evaluate performance, assign work, and determine wages, they reshape the relationship between employers and workers. And the strongest evidence comes from a control experiment presented at the ASEAN Conference on AI Ethics and Society in 2025. Researchers found that workers managed by AI accepted wages about 40% lower, with one AI model reaching nearly 60% despite performing the same task. And more importantly, they did not see these wages as less fair because they view AI as objective and impartial, and that's called a psychological blind spot to exploitation. Why does this matter philosophically? According to Nozick, justice depends on voluntary exchange. However, voluntary exchange is meaningful only if people can properly evaluate the terms they are accepting. The IES study suggests that AI changes this evaluation process. When workers believe AI is objective, they become less likely to recognize unfair bias or question about wage decisions. As a result, while acceptance may appear voluntary, but workers may not be fully informed when deciding whether the exchange is actually fair. These findings also have important implications for equal opportunity and long-term prosperity. Equal opportunity is not simply having a job, It also means having opportunities to improve your economic positions. If AI management makes workers less likely to question wise decisions, it weakens one of the key mechanisms which people improve their economic position. And from an economic perspective, prosperity is built over time to salary growth and successful negotiation. If workers negotiate less, they may capture a smaller share of the value they create, making long-term prosperity more difficult to achieve. To conclude, our three arguments all point to the same underlying issues. AI affects more than workers' income. It reshapes the mechanism which workers build long-term prosperity by changing career opportunities, labor market mobility, and bargaining power. Universal basic income may provide important short-term financial securities. However, it doesn't directly address these structural changes. Therefore, our team argues that if inequality is created by structural change in the labor market, the solution must also go beyond income transfer. Thank you.
So if the AI industry really is concentrating wealth and opportunities into the hands of very few people who scarce talent, broken entry-level ladder, and a power imbalance in the employment relationship, the next question is how should society respond? This is exactly why UBI has been proposed as a solution. But we're going to show that while the problem is real, UBI is not the right answer to the very problem we just laid out. This brings us to our second topic. Topic 10 asks whether universal minimum income is necessary and desirable in the age of robotics and AI. Our group disagree. Before we get into the case, we want to start by being precise about what we actually are going against. So let's define UBI properly first. So UBI is unconditional. No proof of need, income, or job status is required to receive it. It is universal, paid to every citizen equally regardless of wealth or employment, and is periodic, delivered on a fixed schedule, typically monthly, for an indefinite duration. This is different from what most people assume. UBI is not an unemployment benefit, which requires proving joblessness and usually ends once someone finds a job. It's not workfare, which requires performing labor or job search activity in exchange for payment, and it's not targeted welfare, which is means tested and phased out as income rises. These distinctions matters because our document today is specifically about unconditional cash, not about social support in general. So we have defined what we're testing, and we need a specific framework to evaluate the current situation. So rather than jumping between different arguments at random, we apply the same three-pillar framework consistently across everything that follows. The first is economic. Can UBI actually be funded and sustained at a national scale given how mobile AI capital is across borders? The second is political. Who ends up holding the leverage once the state and its citizen become dependent of this funding mechanism? And the third is ethical. What does structural work provide for human well-being that an unconditional cash payment cannot replicate? With this framework in place, I will hand it over to the next teammate who will walk us through the case that put all three of these pillars to the test.
So many technology leaders, particularly within the AI industries, have argued that UBI is inevitable response to automations because it protects workers whose job may disappear. However, I would take a different position. We argue that while UBI may reduce certain financial hardship, it does not address the structural problem created by AI. The strongest evidence available today, also funded by the AI industry itself, suggests that simply giving people cash is not enough. Our first argument is once people lose income to automations, unconditional cash is insufficient to compensate for what they lost. This overlooks the fact that AI trains for more than income. As arguing topic 9, AI concentrates valuable skill, data ownership, and decision-making power within a small number of technology firms. The structural shift reduce worker ability to build long-term careers, weaken their bargaining power, and limited wealth accumulations. And replacing lost wage with cash does not reverse any of this. The strongest evidence comes from the largest privately funded UBI experience ever conducted. Between the November 2020 and October 2023, the open research backed by OpenAI CEO Sam Altman ran a 3-year study of 3,000 low-income participants in Texas and US. Of these, 100 participants received $100 a month unconditionally, while 200% in control group received $50 a month. Almond personally contributed $14 million toward the roughly $60 million raise, making it the largest study of this field. The results directly undercut the case for UBI as a solution to AI-driven disruptions. Recipients did increase spending on necessities such as food, housing, and transportation. They also report reduced stress and improved mental health, but only during the first year. By year 2 and year 3, those psychological gains had faded entirely. Under physical health, the study found no significant effect, no improvement on self-report health, healthcare access, or even health behavior such as exercise or sleep. The employment findings are even more damaging to the UBI support positions. Recipients did not move to better jobs or see improved job quality. In fact, cash transfer were associated with worse, not better labor market outcome.
The recipient worked 1.3 to 1.4 fewer hours per week than the control group, and they were about 2 percentage points less likely to be employed, and their own earning from work fell by at least 12% for every dollar received, dragging the total household income down by at least 21% per dollar. As lead researchers ever said in the study that she found no effect on the quality of employment. Simply redistributing income is insufficient. Instead, the OpenAI 2026 white papers propose a public wealth fund that would allow citizens to directly share in the AI-driven economic growth by giving everyone a stake in the return generated by AI-related investments. Rather than relying on solely on cash transfers or traditional welfare, this shift particularly significant because it suggests that even one of the strongest supporters for UBI recognized that fundamental issues is ownership and access to productive assets, not simply the availability of income. Continue with our analysis from an economic perspective. This finding challenges the central assumptions behind UBI. The debate is not whether cash can reduce poverty. It clearly can. The more important question is whether cash alone can restore the opportunities that AI has altered. Our answer is no. Money can temporarily reduce their financial stress, but it cannot recreate the career pathway that disappear through the automations. It cannot generate the productive employment, rebuild the worker bargaining power, or redistribute ownership of the AI technologies that increasingly create economic value. This argument is also consistent with the economic perspective of sustainable prosperities depend on productive participation and meaningful work rather than rely solely on the income transfer. And moving to the political analysis, some commentators describe UBI as a way to protect citizens from technological disruption. However, another concern is who ultimately design and control that safety net. Following the publications of the open research finding, OpenAI policy's recommendation is increasingly expand beyond the unconditional cash transfer toward broader proposals, such as the public investment in AI infrastructure, industrial policy, and shared ownership mechanisms. Rather than just focusing on the recurring cash payment, the proposal emphasizes enabling citizens to participate in the long-term economic value generated by AI. More broadly, if government grow dependent on large AI firms to design future welfare system, those firms may gain significant influence over the public policy instead of reducing the inequality. Society might intentionally concentrate even more on the economic and political power in the organizations that are really dominant in the AI development. Therefore, the best available evidence show UBI cannot restore the opportunity AI has changed.
Now let's move to argument 2. Cash transfer alone cannot be human capabilities. As 2 has shown, the open research experiment found that cash transfer did not fundamentally change participant long-term circumstances. From an ethical perspective, this revealed that people need more than income. They need opportunities to develop their abilities and adapt to an AI-driven economy. Specifically, the participant from St. Armand study received guaranteed income for 3 years, but there was little evidence that the cash alone translated into stronger capabilities or new long-term opportunities. Instead, it was mainly used to meet immediate living expenses. In other words, cash can relieve today's hardship, but it cannot by itself build the capabilities needed for tomorrow. This finding is consistent with IES-T226WSB capability approach, one of the key theories introduced in this course. He argues that well-being should not be measured simply by income, but by people capabilities, by the real freedom and opportunities to develop their skill and participate in society, and also to achieve the lives they value. Income is only a mean, not the ultimate goal. Therefore, ethical public policy should focus not only providing income, but on strengthening human capabilities. So while UBI may still play a complementary role in reducing poverty, it should not be the central policy to respond to AI. Government should prioritize policy that build capability, such as job guarantee, where the government acts as the employer of last resort by providing paid work to anyone who are unable to find a job, and this helps people to continue developing their skill, gain experience, and remain active participant in a society. In conclusions, throughout both topics, our team has presented one consistent argument. In topic 9, we show that AI is concentrating opportunity, wealth, and power, and in topic 10, we argue that the universal basic income is not the right response. Economically, it cannot restore the opportunities that AI has removed, and the capabilities approach remind us that genuine prosperity depends not only on income, but on people's capabilities to learn and work and participate in societies. Therefore, rather than relying on primarily cash transfers, government should expand people's capabilities through educations, lifelong learning, and job guarantee programs.